The Clay County School Board workshop meeting, May 29, 2018, will come to order. I'd like to welcome you all. I don't know if we have any non-employees here, but you're welcome to be here. Mr. Davis is glad to have you. Is there somebody? Oh, one. Well, welcome. That's a personal welcome. Okay. Okay. Our workshop today is the draft agenda review for the regular meeting of June the 7th, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Davis.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. We have a packed house today. We'll start immediately with our recognitions. We'll have a recognition. Yes, ma'am.
I forgot one thing. Let me note for the record that Ms. Gilhousen is absent today.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We'll start with recognition and awards. Recognition for the Clay Legislative Delegation, brought by Mrs. Condon. In addition, we have recognition for students with perfect attendance, and also recognition for the Rotary Science Fair selection for the state competition selections, and also Social Studies Teachers of the Year.
Let me ask you this.
Yep.
On the Social Studies Teachers of the
Yes,
Year,
ma'am.
are we going to do...
Yes, ma'am. Kelly Watt and Christy Gomez, she'd like to recognize them for their work on the
Yeah,
board.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It was such a nice event the other day. I'm sorry you missed
Sorry, I
it,
missed
but
it. I was in the middle of biting
I know.
fingernails and in the state championship game. So,
hey, we're proud of them.
yeah,
They
they still
did.
hurt.
And all three
Yes.
members of our
They're
legislative
right.
delegation have it on their calendars and plan to be there.
Oh, good.
Great.
Very good. Okay.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Are we going to recognize Stephanie Milton, the reading point at the meeting, or?
Oh, yeah, we should recognize.
Well,
her.
not this one, but.
Yeah, we will.
Thinking
Maybe in
maybe a
August.
future
It'd probably be
meeting.
August.
And when we go back to school,
Yep.
probably.
Yep.
The August meeting might be too early. If
Yeah, it
she's
could
on
be August,
vacation for
September.
the summer, so.
Why wouldn't we recognize her now?
We can. We can reach out.
Is she
We-
a
or
10-month or 11-month
I
employee?
think she's a 10-month.
She's a 10-month, but
She
it's a
might
week
have the
from now.
summer
I don't know
off.
if we wanted to add it at this point, or.
I think it would be grand. I mean,
Okay.
This would be the
the
time
state
to add.
winner.
Mhm.
Well, it
Let's
just
just-
happened,
It just
so.
happened.
Ms.
That
Bush,
was awesome.
we're going to add recognizing Stephanie Melton as the support employee for the state of Florida. That's an oversight. We should have done that.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I mean, that's a
Huge.
biggie.
That was excellent. I went to that meeting and it
Yeah.
was just,
I mean, we could wait, but
This is
it's
the
just
time.
happened. This is the time. Let's give her some attaboys.
Okay.
And who will be in charge of that? You?
Yeah, we'll take care of it.
I knew.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, C1, just minutes from the workshop for April, school board workshop from April 21st, 23rd, special meeting on the 23rd, hearing and regular meeting for May 3rd. C2 is our Bradford County local agreement, which allows us to have access to kids in the Kingsley Lake area. We receive around 187 students from the Bradford County, and they receive some of ours. So just reciprocal agreement for both of us.
How many of ours do they receive?
Less than an hour, 187. We're working on that number right now.
I'm sure.
Yeah, way less. That's a question I asked too.
You know, that goes way, way back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. We'll continue to put it in effect.
When roads were not 4-lane.
Yes,
were
ma'am.
they paid? Sorry, I'm sorry.
C3 is the personnel consent agenda. On this consent agenda is a number of items I'll bring to your attention. First one, admin reappointments will be brought to everyone under this umbrella as it has been in the past. It will be brought 48 hours prior to the board meeting. We will put all the names on there for admin appointments. In addition, this is we're bringing a couple of job descriptions for your review. The first one is the Dean of School Culture. This is not a position that we are seeking to add at the district level for schools. However, we've had principals talk about potentially bringing a Dean of School Culture that can really help with behaviors, really help looking at data analytics, have a better accessibility to have better relationships between students and also our teachers. And for any principal that has builds their master schedule and meets class size, they will have the option of bringing on board a Dean of School Culture. For this to take place, it has to go to multiple screening processes through the Chief of Secondary Education or myself and Dr. Stallman. We will look at make certain they're in compliance before this can even become an option. This is really openly an option for two of our largest schools. And I say that from Fleming Island High School along with Oakleaf Senior High School as well. They have between 23 to 2,500 students. They do have 3 assistant principals at each of these schools. However, there's some that with that number of kids, you get bogged down into the discipline work, and you really don't get a chance to focus on helping working side by side teachers to build their craft instructionally and their pedagogy as well. So this may be a strategy to help them. I know we spoke about this a year ago, potentially bringing to the table. We just didn't have the funding to do so, and in this way, it's pushed to schools that may need assistance.
How many
This will
guidance
be-
counselors do these, like the big high schools you're talking about, how many guidance counselors?
Just, it's
do we-
based on the formula. I can get that information to you, so I would say minimum 3.
Can I ask another question on that? Years ago, we didn't have all assistant principals, we had deans.
Yes, ma'am.
So what, I understand
Yeah.
logically what the difference is, but how would that, and I know you weren't here to know how that change came about, maybe
Right.
you stuttered remembers, but what would be the reason to shift away from deans to handle discipline and assistant principals to handle other?
Yeah, I would say that assistant principals won't take away all of their discipline of working with this school, but it's more just an extra support. We get, probably historically years ago, I could only, try to, make an educated guess of why they transitioned from dean of discipline or dean of schools, is because they wanted an assistant principal to become more involved in the day-to-day administrative decision-making opportunities and also work through instruction, whereas the deans probably didn't do instruction at all. So this is a point where APs have so much on their plates, and we know that, same way as teachers, and we're just trying to alleviate some of that work with discipline to have better focus on positive behaviors versus working from a reactive mode from discipline. It's hard to get in the classrooms and support teachers and help them when they need to model, and this would be an opportunity to alleviate some of that.
Would this be in each high school?
Only those who can prove to meet class size and be able to pick up the position. So this is not something we're going to add on top of it.
Wouldn't be junior highs or?
If I have an awesome master schedule in Becky Murphy. She does great work at Lake Asbury. So I'm just giving you an example. If she has the freedoms in her master schedule to do it, then she can bring it on board. She's a large school as well. These individuals will be under the umbrella of
Teachers.
Sure.
They'll be on instructional aid, but not under the CCEA.
Yeah.
Because we haven't even discussed that. We have no job description for such a person, and they're not part of our perk, and they're not instructional. If they're not teaching, they're not instructional, they don't fall under us.
From our side, it's a teaching position. So we'll figure out if you need any help with that.
So
And I
currently,
think-
who's handling disciplines at those high schools now? Is
It's
one
it's
AP
no, it's
responsible for all
multiple.
disciplines?
It's broken up between either grade level by alpha. It's broken up based on the leadership of the principal. So it's distributed.
My only reservation, I want to do what's in the best interest of the kids, but my only reservation is where we are adding more admin type
Yeah,
people.
and through the chair, this
And
is not an admin position. As I said, this is a teaching position.
It's not a-
It's not an admin position, teaching
We were
position.
told that's not teaching, so
It's not.
I guess
ad-
we're gonna have to do
yeah.
our homework on this
Yeah, it's
one.
not an admin position, I can tell you that right now.
Well, all you're asking this month, right, is to approve the job
That's
description.
it. That's
So
There's
it.
no
no
allocation
allocation.
for it.
No, ma'am.
Right.
I
So we
openly
usually get the
am
job
not bringing any,
description. We'll have
I will
plenty of
not
time.
bring any allocations for this.
Okay.
So, I'm just
We'll
telling
have
They would
plenty-
have to qualify,
That's correct.
then you'd have to bring
Yeah.
it back to us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we usually get the job description.
And
after
actually,
that,
at the end of the day, yeah, they would have to adjust, we'd bring it back from adjustment, but they'd have to prove competence with their master schedule, the class size, before they even get a chance to have
So you're
this
saying they're
conversation.
not admin, and Ms. Piva's saying they're not teachers, so.
Well, it sounds
It's
very
not
much
an
like a
position.
guidance counselor
I can
position.
tell you
guidance
that right now,
In
so
many
I'm not
respects,
concerned
and
with
that's
anyone
going to
else's
be in that same.
And that's what
that same
I will have
bandwidth.
time to investigate, how many guidance counselors and stuff.
Okay.
They're
I
not part
don't
of
know how
our perk
this-
agreement, that's what
I'm
I'm
just-
saying.
I'm
just
I
leery
couldn't
about
add to that.
hiring.
They couldn't be
Yeah.
part of my perk.
So maybe you guys need to have a conversation to,
Yeah. Maybe.
work out all the
Yeah.
little kinks
Yeah.
so that
So-
everybody's happy when it comes
Yeah,
back to us.
Mr. Connor, through the chair, have you had that conversation?
No, sir.
Yeah.
It would be helpful with anything that is related to contracts for, all our staff, everybody listen up. It would be helpful if everybody, follows procedures so that we're not violating collective bargaining in any way at all before it's brought to the board. It would just be more helpful for us, so.
Right, at this point though, it's not a collective bargaining
It's not,
issue,
it's
it's
not
just
an
a
issue.
job
No.
description,
Yeah.
right? That's
Right.
my
But it could
understanding.
potentially
Right.
be.
And that, once the job description,
All the job descriptions, that's instructional,
correct,
goes through the
through
PERC.
the PERC, okay.
And we go in front of the PERC and have those job descriptions. So you're adding a job description into my job descriptions that I'm supposed to put in front of PERC. That, I don't know any,
Just, yeah, have the conversation for us, please.
Okay, well, we have time.
Okay, so also you'll see intern auditor position that was, Ms. Dr. Legucco, his staff are adding because it's part of their division, moving from a director 2 to a 1. In addition, you'll see that we're moving from Sprint. We've had, the board has approved 2 positions for Sprint. And previously, however, we're going to bring the board today with a new concept for professional development and with the University of North Florida, a new partnership. And would like to change the name from Sprint facilitator to a resident clinical faculty, which means that this individual will be on site all day versus being in a part-time where they're at the school for 2 days a week and then 3 days a week at University of North Florida. So just this job description will remain the same, it's just a new title through University of North Florida. In addition, you'll see that we are bringing today is a lead school safety officer. So this is a lead for school safety officers as well. So as you know, in Senate Bill 7026, the sheriff has the ability to determine whether or not he's going to approve the Guardian program. And he sent an email to me, I would say around a week ago, stating that we must have a school safety officer lead positions, I would say. So in order for him to approve it, my aspirations was to have that meeting prior to come today. We had a meeting scheduled for Friday. It got canceled. Their staff, something may have come up. So we're meeting today at 1:30 with staff to go over the school safety officer, school guardianship, along with the finalize of the contract that they've had for over a week now. So looking to finalize all this information.
So how many of these lead?
3. Right now,
So-
the chair, he's asking for 3 to be instituted and implemented for next
So
year.
in
or they
addition
want
to
approve it.
the SROs, they would have 3 kind of supervisors?
Yes, ma'am.
How did they come up with the number 3?
Yeah.
Having the same span of control in which they have in the Clay County Sheriff's Office, and they're doing for the resource officers. So for every, I think it's just between every 10, and I say that because there's relief in there as well, that they'd have a lead school safety officer. So I hope to talk deeper into that with the sheriff this afternoon at 1:30 with staff, to see if we can make certain that it's the right thing to do instructionally to get it passed.
So what we approved last month had a specific number that we were, and I
Was it
can't remember.
I believe it's 27.
27?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it counting these 3, or do we now have to approve 3 more besides the job description?
I believe that you would have to now approve 3 more.
And
So-
have
They're
any
not
idea
included.
how much that costs?
Yes, ma'am. It's going to be around 120 grand.
For the
Each?
3?
Yes, ma'am. Somewhere around there. Yes, ma'am.
Each?
Yeah. No, together.
Oh.
No, it's not. It won't be 120 grand for all of them. For all of
So
them.
what happens if we don't approve those 3?
I would say that then the Guardian program goes away, and I bring back options to the board. He has the ability. It says clearly in Senate Bill 7026 that the sheriff may elect to implement the Guardian program, but does not have to.
So he's holding us hostage.
He just has a vision
So
for what
3.
his span of
So
control
how
is.
does that affect Orange Park and Green Cove?
Doesn't impact them.
With the different ones.
They stay consistent with their contract and our initiative to work with them. So
Mr. Superintendent,
yes, sir.
if I could.
Yep.
This is a non-bargaining unit position.
Right.
Okay, so there's no, I wanted to point that out because you already approved the job description last month.
Yes,
Same-
but not this one.
The same job description brought back, but changing the salary schedules up in the right-hand corner.
And what's the salary for a lead?
For the lead, it's 17.
17, 18 an hour.
17, 18.
1570.
How have the applications been coming?
Pretty good. We got about 65 applications thus far. And we're in the process of honing that down to the best we can.
Should know more today. That's what I'm bringing.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
please keep us
Will.
informed.
Well, I hope to get it done today. I'm not leaving the room. We got to get it done today.
I'm sure we can all work together.
Yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
absolutely.
Always.
All right. C4 is renewal of the list of physicians and medical facilities authorized to conduct physical examinations, and this is for employees such as our bus drivers have to go through physical examinations for bus riders. So this is just identifying 5 areas in which, facilities in which those individuals can go to. C5 is the changes to the salary schedule for the contract year of 18-19. This is just reflective of what the board has already approved for the food nutrition services last month, and also the title changes for business affairs. So anytime we have a change you approve, we'll have to bring back for approval overall. C6 is out-of-county travel. This is a number of state competitions. This is where we have schools going to college tours, RTC going to leadership camps, and Orange Park High School will be going to New Orleans because they're going to perform at the Sugar Bowl halftime.
Cool.
Yeah, so pretty cool stuff. So that's in there embedded as well. So
Way to
maybe
go.
anybody need a chaperone to go
I
to New
started
Orleans?
to say, do they need some chaperones?
Yeah, just let us know.
You guys have fun.
I'm not going to New Orleans. Been there, done that.
I want to chaperone.
Crazy. C7 is the advertised modifications for the student progression plan. There are a number of changes. Mr. Connor?
Yeah, the document, put that up under the
Okay.
folder there.
Wanna walk
So you
through it?
pass those out.
Okay, let me pass this through.
You got an extra? I get
Yes,
one
ma'am.
today.
Yes, ma'am. Anybody else need one? I got it. Wanna walk through it, Terry?
Okay, so we've made some major revisions to the student progression plan, also some minor ones. You'll see as you go throughout the document, the draft is posted there on the agenda item. So you'll have some time if you want to get real, get down deep and look at each section. But want to provide an overview and rationale for some of the revisions in the student progression plan. So we broke it up by section. So the first top section there is the introduction. You see the elementary section and then the secondary section. So as you go through the document, as you really look through over the next few days, if you see any specific or have any specific questions, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll definitely be able to explain more in detail. But as you look at the overall elementary section, we added a lot of new language regarding MTSS and our process there. So you'll see how, what our procedures are for problem solving, looking at tier 2 and tier 3 interventions in each step of that phase. So you'll see a lot of language in particularly MTSS, and that's for both elementary and secondary. We added some language there due to House Bill 7055 as it relates to reading deficiencies, and as you know, we have a HOPE scholarship and we have a reading scholarship now where students who are deficient in reading can apply, and if the funds are available, they can receive that those funds. Also for the HOPE scholarship in House Bill 7055 is related to bullying and other types of physical violent activities where students could request to go to a different school. So there's some language that will probably be more embedded in the student code of conduct for that, but we do reference the HOPE scholarship as far as where students can take advantage of that based as it relates to the student progression plan. The attendance section has been revised just because of federal law and ESA, the Every Student Succeeds Act. We just wanted to make sure that language was tightly fit and aligns to that act. So you'll see a lot of definitions such as what is a habitual truant, unexcused, excused absences, what exactly that is and how they define it. And then what interventions, because attendance is part of the MTSS process, so we outline what interventions will take place related to attendance. Again, that is in the elementary and the secondary section. Some of our assessments that were in the student progression plan were just outdated. Performance matters with some of the language where we used Achieve 3000 or iReady as our progress monitoring assessment, so we just went in and updated that language. You'll see in the elementary section regarding remediation, in the old language it talked about a 50-minute reading block. We actually do remediation in multiple areas in elementary, so we struck that language so that we could make sure it encompasses all of the places where we do remediation and reading. We were more specific with our ELL language. We talk about how we enter students into that program, how we place them, how we assess them, how we retain them, and how we exit them. So when you see that section, it just is more specified to those processes when we talk about our ELL students. When you get to the secondary section, you'll see a lot of strikeouts, but what we did is we actually moved things into the appropriate subtitles. So we have a new section in secondary education called Articulated Acceleration, and that includes dual enrollment, early admissions. Those were previously their own sections, and what we did is we struck those and just moved them under one section. So it was just basically some reformatting. Our Bright Future Scholarship Program, you'll see that there are now 4 different awards instead of 3, so we made sure we added that language. We just reworded course sequencing for junior high school courses, and because it just didn't flow very good, so for better flow and reading, we revised that language. For course substitutions, we had some updates due to House Bill 7069. We do not have the physical fitness test as a way to be exempt or waived from PE, so we had to remove that language. Also, the CTE department had some state rules that they needed to adjust, so when you go in there, you'll see some just updates to CTE, and that's just based on the state rule. Our CAP, Credit Acceleration Program, we wanted to make sure that parents understood that if they decided to cap a course, that they were responsible for the fees. So if I wanted to take a CLEP test or I want to take an AP exam but not take the course and get the credit, it is the responsibility of the family to pay for that. We added a new section, dropping, transferring from honors or advanced courses. This has been a headache of many of our counselors where students are requesting to drop an AP course at the very end of the term or midway through. And so we put some language in there and some criteria that they have to meet in order to drop an AP course. So for instance, after 10 days, they can't drop unless they have a D or an F, they've had a parent conference with administration or the counselor, and there's room in an additional course where they can go into. So you'll see that for our full year courses and our half year courses, what criteria it takes to drop an advanced course. Again, you'll see ELL language is the same as in the elementary, we just want to be more specific. We struck the Florida Academic Scholar Award because really what it was talking about is voluntary service hours. And so we just struck that language and created a section called voluntary service hours at the end of the document. And all that language is in there. And then we really specified for voluntary service hours what is voluntary service and what is not voluntary service, because we were having some troubles in schools. Everybody wanted to just do anything for volunteer service hours, and we wanted to be more specific in that. Florida Seal of Biliteracy, we just updated that language to include the silver and the gold seal of biliteracy. Our grading scale, we just did some reformatting to make it easier to read. Graduation options, again, we consolidated some of our other sections, such as the IB and the ACE sections, and we put them under the graduation option, as well as the online course requirement. It was its own individual section, and we placed it under graduation options, so more formatting. For reading and math remediation, when you get to that section, you'll see that we just updated some of the ways in which we place our 11th and 12th graders. We don't put them necessarily in intensive reading. What we do now is ACT, SAT prep under the intensive reading course number. And they do a lot of ACT prep there. And then we added some information regarding our master schedule guidelines. Why, if students are struggling in math or are deficient in math, what is their placement in high school? For instance, if I'm a level 1 and I go into algebra, I'm taking algebra 1A, 1B. If I finish that course with a level 1 or 2, then I go to LAM, because that's going to give me more time to remediate those algebra concepts before I go on to geometry. So you'll see some language in there about our master schedule guidelines. We added a new section here, and this is actually a situation that has occurred currently, a valedictorian and salutatorian recognition. We've had some individuals currently this year who have transferred schools under a pretense, but we believe it's become the valedictorian of that school. And so we wanted to make sure that if that happens, whether it's an out-of-county transfer or an in-county transfer, if you transfer schools within your senior year, You can be named co-valedictorian, but you would not be named the sole valedictorian, because we felt that the kids who have been at that school for 2, 3, 4 years were getting slighted by this person coming in their very last year and taking it. So it's not that they're not valedictorian, they can be named co-valedictorian. Same with salutatorian as well. So you can be named co-salutatorian.
Mr. Connor, are they still doing valedictorian and salutatorian have they gone back to any of these, for instance, at Ridgeview? Because I know Ridgeview at one
does
point.
cum sum laude, and
Right,
they do.
okay.
And actually, I'll be honest,
Are there
a
any
personal
other high
preference,
schools
I
that have
actually
gone
like
that
that.
route?
So tradition kind of has ruled the day on what schools have decided to do. So if we do leave it up to the schools if they want to do the top 10% magna
Right.
cum laude, which I know Ridgeview does that. And actually, I think that recognizes a lot more students in that realm. We've had this discussion with principals in the past, and they kind of like to stick with the valedictorian and salutatorian at most of those schools. And that's okay. We just wanted to make sure that we wasn't sliding our students, so we added that section.
Yeah, I know there was an issue with this last year at Keystone, because the valedictorian never attended a Clay County class for one day except for after
enrolled in
sixth
the
grade,
same thing.
except that senior year, and took one on-campus class, but was dual enrolled from 7th grade on.
That's just not
And
right.
the one who was there
Well-
and worked hard the whole time was one like a half point behind or something. Was very close.
That's sad.
And he was really disappointed. So
Yeah.
thanks for
Thank you for putting this together.
You're
This is,
welcome. And that last little, the
very
very at the
good.
bottom there, there are other little minor changes, and most of those are grammatical changes. So if you have any questions as we post this, feel free to reach out.
Before we move on, oh, go ahead, Brenda.
I have a question, under assessments that you have for progress monitoring, Achieve and iReady. So iReady is no longer optional if it's gonna be used for optional curriculum, because now it's gonna be used for progress monitoring. Do I understand that correctly?
It's part of the assessment calendar that the board approved, so it's part of a progress monitoring, so it is optional for what you use, but they have to take there's a window, they have to take the best baseline, and I believe it was the end of the year or the menu, just a two, so it's part of the assessment plan. That's why we identified it as, and it's a quantifier for many teachers to determine whether or not
Isn't
they're highly
progress
effective.
monitoring supposed to be done by law every 5 weeks?
Not every
No,
5 weeks.
progress
but we
monitoring's
do
done.
progress monitoring
Yeah,
plan.
So you can do it at the beginning and end, and they're fine then?
Actually, that's what the state, you can do. The state requires you to do beginning, mid-year, and end of the year. They just gotta have a progress monitoring plan. Progress monitoring is every single day, whether you're having conversation with kids or informally or
I
those
understand
kind
that,
of
but you have it on the pupil progression plan that it's Achieve 3000 and iReady.
which
It's
is, those
being
are,
used for progress monitoring.
those are two of the ones that are approved by the board to do it. So, if you, we can look through it together.
So my point is that it's not an optional curriculum anymore.
It is an optional supplement, it's actually supplement materials.
Thanks, I know you guys worked really hard on this, and I appreciate all that y'all worked.
Again, we're just looking, Mr. Hunter, to have the board approve for advertisement, correct?
That's correct.
And then after the 21 days to act on the plan itself, right? So what we want to do is change that after 30 days to put after 21 days, which is the amount of time that you'll need to give. That'll give the public notice, 21 days. The board is meeting again on June 28th. Right. So we'll want to just change that to 21 days.
Thank you. Okay, we'll have this as the board, if the board approves this, we will put this online and we'll publish it. I know there was concerns last year that how the parents know, so we'll use this document to be able to push them to where adjustments can be made and seen. Thank you, Scott. C8 is the YMCA license agreement for the use of properties. This is a 3-year, 2018 through 2020. This is for all 27 elementary schools in our district. That we now have added deliverables, which they've never had before, which makes certain that they have accountability for attendance, academics, behavior. So if this program, this initiative, which they do great things for us, we now just want to make certain that we run analytics to provide insight of how well the students who are attending the YMCA after-school program are doing fair to kids who do not, so that we can help them in order to evolve and get better.
And we're implementing it at the new school?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect, great.
Principal
Can I talk about
changed her mind
incentive,
last week.
Superintendent
You can.
There's the superintendent, the incentive.
You can.
So the YMCA offered to give each school $500 as a one-time contribution to each school, as well as membership to the YMCA for the principal and assistant principal this year. So that was a little added.
Very good.
Is that allowed?
I don't,
It kind of feels like a bribe.
Can they?
Take the Y program and we'll give you free membership to your principal
I
and
think you have
AP.
school board policy against
I
that.
don't think that's allowed.
Look,
I don't know.
No, seriously,
First-
I don't think that's
offering it.
allowed.
first meeting here.
I don't think we can do a
The 500
contract.
Contract review, Mr. Daggett is gonna probably.
Well, the $500 to
I
the
didn't-
school
this
was
is the
allowed,
first
but
I'm
not
hearing about
membership.
that.
I don't think the
Yeah.
membership is allowed. Yeah, the 500 to the school.
If they, I mean, at the end of the day, if they
They give
want to, if they want
memberships
to
to
raffle,
Teacher
if they
of
want
the
to
Year
raffle something
finalists.
off for a teacher of the
Yeah, but
year,
that's
teacher, can do
different.
that.
That's an award
It's not
for
the same
teacher.
as
I'm-
take
I'm
our
sure.
program and we'll give you a
The
membership.
point is that is not, that's not part of this contract, right?
No, that's first.
Okay, so we can talk about it.
Hysterical.
They're-
Hey, look,
They are.
we're not
waiving
going to
the
jail for teachers to work out on the law. Principals.
Oh, sorry,
Employees don't have time.
news for me for principals, so.
Let me get Mr.
I went into
Daggett.
that conversation about principals, maybe for the record. when I-
Okay, Mr. Daggett, you can research and see if
I'll look
that's
at it.
legal.
Yeah.
You know, we
Actually,
don't want to
I'd
do
rather do
anything
stuff for
illegal.
teachers.
The
and-
contract is 100% legal.
Right, thank you. All right, so we'll look into that. That's news to me. C9 is FLICA is just bringing a interlocal agreement between school board and the Department of Military Affairs. This is our FLICA move forward. They have 77% pass rate, around 150 students in their cohorts, and it's 5.5 months for residential phase in terms for helping students get on track.
We had a big change to the financial amount that we contributed last year.
We did,
And they were able to,
yes ma'am,
very good.
not money,
I'm glad.
yeah,
Good,
$400,000.
very
we saved.
good, good on you.
Good.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. C10 is the Professional Development School Partnership, which this is a new initiative we want to bring to Clay County. This is through the work of Katie Muller working with the University of North Florida. This is a project that we would like to bring support facilitators and also work with interns in a cohort of schools, which is Grove Park, Orange Park Junior High School, and Orange Park High School. Within these three schools, it's an opportunity to develop the inquiry stance toward teaching by participating in inquiry investigations for interns. As I said earlier, no longer will interns be on site for 2 days and then be at University of North Florida for 3 days. We want to bring that, the entire makeup of this work to these three schools. That's where an intern will go work beside a teacher every single, for 2 or 3 days, and then the other 2 days they actually have course and classes on site with their facilitator, professional development facilitator, and they'll work in order to build their schools. So this is all about job embedded learning versus being isolated and half the time at schools, half the time at the University of North Florida. So a plug for us is that we got it instead of St. John's. So if St. John's is watching, it's one for the good guys. Katie Muller, anything you want to talk about this?
It's so popular, the dean wrote me last week asking to discuss with you 2 more schools
Yep.
in the Orange Park area.
Yep, and I think I sent back the other two, SBJ and potentially Chair.
Could
Now,
I,
I have a quick question regarding the internships. This doesn't exclude those students going to other schools for
No,
internships,
we
correct?
we
That
in
was my
fact
one
just
concern when I
assigned
saw this.
interns all over the district,
Yes.
even out at
Because those are awesome.
Keystone
Mhm.
and some,
Okay.
no, all over.
I just wanted to be sure that we were
Right.
still feeding the other schools, because
Right.
that's critical. Sorry.
through the chair, the teachers they volunteer to have an intern in this Orange Park High and Orange Park Junior High and Grove Park, so the teachers are asked if they want an intern.
Absolutely.
We don't want them having
Yeah, we
one
don't
if
want-
they don't want it.
Yeah, we never
Years
want to
when
place
you
in
want
terms of
them,
the teacher
years
doesn't
when
want to
you
do it.
Yeah.
I have a one
Are you
change.
using that, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
are you using that word intern and support facilitator interchangeably?
No, support facilitator is what's formerly a sprint specialist.
I see.
Yeah,
And so
thank you.
the university requested that we change this terminology from sprint to resident faculty.
That's what it would be.
So that's what it'll
clinical
be.
faculty. I gotta
that'll
get
be
used to the
working.
word.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
They'll be
ma'am.
there all day.
In the number 3, the resident clinical faculty MOU, you need to change the chair. You
Well,
have Janet.
these are not finalized, so
Well-
I'm gonna need to,
But-
we absolutely need to change some of the
Okay,
language that
just
you see in
making sure,
front of you.
because there's, Ms. Caracos was listed as the chairperson.
Yes.
So you've been working on this for a while.
Okay, C11 is the two-day Principal Institute, Leadership Institute that will have principals and APs within the school district. Last year, if you remember, we partnered with the New Teacher Project and we brought in to focus on the area of literacy. Now as we focus on literacy the entire calendar year to understand the shifts of literacy, now we want to transition to mathematics to understand the shifts of math, which is all about implementing rigor, coherence, and focus in the mathematical practices related to alignment to lessons and understanding how to leverage curriculum. And last year's it was around $17,000 for 2 days. This year we got it down to $12,000. So it'll be a great focus for the entire administration. So this year I'll be focused on math for the entire school year and looking at mathematical practice to evolve.
Were we involved with that the first day last year, or was that something else? Remember we
I
went
believe I invited everyone, and you were involved in the one where technology wasn't working at
You did
Pleasant
it.
Island.
Right,
That was a
right.
welcome back,
That's
that
welcome
was
back,
not
yeah.
the
Okay,
leadership
thank you.
Yeah,
institute.
but you're
knew
more
there
than
was
welcome to
something,
come
but
to
no,
this
nope,
as
that's
well.
fine.
This would be really high level. It's really high level, deep content exposure for leaders, and it'll be a heavy day, but you're more than welcome to come. It'll be a good
It's
day.
a everyday thing.
That's good. I don't want us to do that. C12 is University of North Florida Instructional Leadership and Coaching Program for Clay County Assistant Principals. If you remember last year, not only did we bring in TNTP to help us do some work focused on leveraging English curriculum, we also partnered with the University of Florida Lassiter Center to have instructional coaching for every one of our principals. To be openly and honest, I think University of Florida does great work, but however, during the school year, they've had change in leadership, and I'm talking about leadership, professional development facilitator, 2 or 3 times. So they had inconsistencies, so my principals were figuring out who, the dynamics of the leader. So we just elected to allow them to have a pause and time to figure out their staff. And the individual that actually ran the Lassiter Center has since transitioned to the University of North Florida, and she was the nuts and the bolts of the work. So we're going to partner with the University of North Florida to make certain that assistant principals are exposed to the same work. So we're not working on the top down, but it also every assistant principal will work to receive a certification in instructional coaching. That means we're working side by side teachers versus from the top down approach. This is looking at collaboration, scaffold of work, job embedded professional development, along with having bite-sized actionable feedback to teachers to help them enhance their craft. C13 is the daily hours for teachers and students for 18-19. This has not changed, and this talks about professional development hours in PLC as well.
Can I ask a related
Yeah.
question, but not specifically on that?
sure.
So, I know next year we go to all assessments have to be done within a month of the end of the school year.
Yes, ma'am.
And the testing window, and so I guess my question may not be able to be answered today,
Yes, ma'am.
but my question is, we're obviously a district who starts at least 5 days beyond when the state allows, at that August 10th, when they can go, we can go back as early as August 10th.
Yes, ma'am.
And I've noticed that almost all the surrounding districts are out of school by 6-7 days prior to us. And I know you've tried to push testing back as far as you can, and next year it will be even further. I guess my question is, do we need to, at some point, have the calendar committee look at starting in line with everyone else so that the testing window doesn't short our kids by a week?
Yes, ma'am. It's something we can look at for our calendar. We can definitely look and determine if there's a need to move it up, and then to make sure they have sufficient time to cover their standards and outlooks. I can have staff look at that.
Are you talking about
We used to be one of the
moving it
districts that always started the very first day that you could.
a week
and it was
later to
because of
start
our
school?
testing or grades or something.
No.
But I think everybody likes not starting August 8th
I know that,
or 10th.
Wait a minute,
Well,
what are you
but what I'm
talking about?
saying is, I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
a preference. I'm
No,
saying
yeah.
for student achievement and for teaching.
Yeah.
Are you
the
saying
ability.
start school a week earlier?
Yeah, because you can, state law says August 10th, you cannot start before August 10th.
Right.
So, like, for instance, St. John's is out of school right now. They started August
Yeah,
10th,
those
and they
involved,
had
those
shorter
involved.
breaks within the school year.
I think so.
So that obviously they had they had at least a week more of teaching time,
Instructional
instructional time
Instructional
time
prior
for
to
the-
their assessments, because our teachers are still teaching this week and next week. And so my question is, should we look at that so we don't short our teachers and students by as much as a 2-week window? And it's not just St. John's, Putnam is
Yeah.
out, Alachua's out,
Like
July
Grand
is
Rapids.
out this Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna go back in, because now that the window is May only, all these schools are, the talk of the counties are, we have to extend because we can't have them out this early, because they won't get their testing done.
Okay,
So
so
I
that,
think-
and that was really more of what my question is, the
Yeah.
state, is it just your month? Is it your last month?
Yeah, so I think that's, so what I hear from the other counties is, oh my God, we're extending the school year because they've gotta now go back into June, because they need the whole month of May. They can get out this early because they were allowed testing, so you could start your testing that much
Right.
early.
And-
Now the law changed, you can only test the month of May, and they're freaking out. And I think we ought to have a look at that,
Right.
because I don't know how that's gonna affect us
Sure.
because of fitting all the tests that's
And,
required.
and one of the things we do, through the chair, and thank you, Ms. Paiva, one of the things that I've done in the last 2 years in the testing cycle is that I've elected not to be a calibration school district. And the calibration school district means that schools, the state selects a number of schools for them to start the testing window on day one of the testing window, which is like early April. And I think it's unfair to teachers and kids, especially if you're going to have an evaluation for teachers and kids are going to have retention linked to
They
it.
need
So
that.
I've called the state for the last 2 years and I've told them our schools district is not doing it. So we'll look and see how that plays as well. We will
Because they don't
continue
even
not to
know
be
how
a
it's gonna
calibration
play,
school.
because we don't even
Is
know
Is there a
that they did all
benefit
these
to being
tests in
one
May.
or not being one?
No.
Is there a
Well,
disadvantage?
I think by
The
the time,
disadvantage
Why does
of
anybody do it?
I know, because they don't believe, superintendents don't pay attention and say that no, we're not going to do it. And the disadvantage is kids have to take an assessment. They may not have been exposed to standards at that
Right.
time of remediation. It's
Right.
not fair to teachers either.
It
Well,
was terrible when we did
Yeah.
calibration.
Well,
And I think I think we're gonna see scores reflective this year, and I know it's hard to schedule all this testing.
Yes, ma'am.
But I know from different schools, so it's not just one school, but I've heard from parents where their kid took all their assessments in 1 week. So you had 2 days of FSA and then 2 days of EOC. So you have 4 days
Yeah.
of testing in 1 week, and these kids are not doing their best work. They're feeling burned out. And so I know these testing coordinators that it's hard to schedule, but if they can figure out a way to break that up, we'll get
Right.
better results from the kids, which is reflective
Yes,
for the
ma'am.
teachers. And so it all plays into
Right.
why it's best.
I agree.
With the
Well-
law changing and it all being in May now, it's gonna be, I'm gonna tell you, you talked about burnout.
Yeah.
I don't even know how it
Right.
fits.
well, I think by the time the calendar committee gets together, we'll have all this information. Because, on paper, it would be easier to start earlier because we're trying to get the same amount of days in the first semester and the second semester, and it's crazy with Thanksgiving and
Right.
Christmas, and so we work with that. But if all the testing's done, there's a lot of pieces that are going to have to come into play
Right.
before the calendar committee
Yep.
can really do their work.
I mean, and through the chair, one thing we will probably have to do a better job of this year is that we'll probably have meetings in January with test coordinators in schools to make sure what Ms. Condon speaks about. We
Right.
just don't pack it in because we're gonna have 30 days to get it done. So
Right.
we're gonna have to be looking at implementation plans, testing plans, support plans, and what we have to do with the district to go help as well, so that we're up and running for 30 days, so kids aren't mentally exhausted. Because my daughter was one of those as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Those were approved by teachers as well, right?
Yes,
This is just a
ma'am.
repeat from this year?
Repeat,
Got it,
yes.
right.
And we need to make sure we don't have, 3 or 4 Fridays off in a row.
Yeah.
Again, that wasn't a good idea.
All right.
It was 3 or 4
The
Fridays in a
calendar's already
row.
been set for next year.
For next
Right.
year. Well, we
Right.
do the
You
calendar and then we
Yeah,
do a,
2 years, ma'am.
like a
Yeah.
proposed calendar, but we can still
Yes, ma'am. We
Food
can
with it.
adjust.
adjust it.
Yes, ma'am. C14, St. John's Country Day. They want to, they're asking us to use their Title IIA grant funding. This is a pass-through funding for bullying, buy-in communication commitments, which is managed change. I never heard of this training.
We're required to get that.
Yeah, we have to give it to them.
How much is it?
$6,500. C15 is advertisement for the 1819 Code of Conduct for moving forward, Mr. Professor.
Right, you will get a summary and a red line version after I meet with Ms. Paiva and CCA today. And then Mr. Day was later this week, so we'll summarize kind of The big changes, right now we're not anticipating huge changes except in the areas of attendance. We are proposing some additional codes, particularly in light of identity theft, where students are creating accounts that are not of their own. I'm also looking at strengthening and breaking apart. I'll get with Ronald Lee's group today, but the insubordination of students towards teachers. I'd like to break it apart so that verbal and
Very
physical, so the physical has a lot heavier handed action as a result of it. Right now, they're sort of one,
Right.
but that just gives you an idea of some of the stuff that we're looking
Are we addressing videotaping principals?
at. We are strengthening that. We're actually going through and really just tightening up a lot of the definitions.
Yeah.
Some of the feedback that we've gotten so far is to reorganize some of the actions so that they're from least to greatest sort of impact. So that they have some guide as to how they might do that.
What about social media or online? And I know that gets sticky because some of it's not at school, but I know I've heard from some parents who their kids will get in trouble for, say, taking a picture of another student in class and texting it to somebody or whatever. And they feel like if they look at the code of conduct, it's vague because it's only that one. What do they call that? The one IT page, and then the rest of the code of conduct is really more traditional disciplines. So if we can figure out a way to kind of flesh that out some.
Well, we need to be a little more specific on what a disturbance in the school is because
We're adding,
that we had that one situation where, the conversation from the parent was it did create a disturbance in the school and there was a lot of negative to the student, yet I don't feel that the discipline that was issued was strict enough.
So we
Should have
will
been.
definitely.
And I
look
know
at the
you know what I'm
language
talking
and
about.
And we have also considered the addition of inappropriate use of technology, wireless communication, which I think speaks to the point that you, once you get to a certain place right now in the existing code, it's like.
Yeah, there have been. This has
Too
been
bad.
quite a year of stuff.
So now we have a little more teeth.
Yeah.
So, and in this document, it's 40 pages, only 2 pages really define, infractions, which should be reversed. We should be very explicit about what an infraction is, and I love all the supports it has in there.
Yeah.
But when you only hone into 2 pages to identify what an infraction is and the consequences, we've got it backwards. So we're trying to work through that
So
process.
we're
to
adding
get
a
it better.
glossary, we're
Yes.
shifting the actions to the behaviors toward the front, so that it's not like you have to hunt through 40
But think about it, some of these behaviors we weren't seeing 10 years ago.
Oh, absolutely.
People weren't bringing cell phones and videotaping their principal and posting it online. That wasn't happening.
And it's also difficult, and keep in mind, I'm not trying to advocate, I could play both sides of this. So I definitely am not advocating what I would call the gang spank, where it's just like, if you're involved in it, you're all getting the same punishment.
Right.
I really do think that the principals need the flexibility to look at things individually. But I have heard a principal say, I have my assistant principal be more heavy-handed, and then the parents appeal to me and I lower it.
They need to be consistent.
And do
That's,
Chair.
and what if the parent doesn't know to appeal it?
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
that's when the school board member gets the phone call.
Yes.
And then we have to get involved and we shouldn't
Sure.
be,
I agree.
and
I agree.
and then it makes it look like, well, if I appeal it, then if I know who to call and I call
That's
the right person, then I get the lesser punishment for my kid, which isn't okay either.
I agree,
correct.
Chair. We should be
That's
consistent in our
correct.
practice.
Well, it also seems, and I've gotten calls from parents, that things that probably should come to the school board don't. And principals aren't bringing it to us. So, if somebody asks you, which school do you see the most problems from? We might say X, but it really might be Y, and he's just not bringing it to the board because we're not aware of it. They're handling it, and they're really not handling it properly like it should come. Certain items should come to the board.
So if there's examples, the Chair, there are examples, please let us know so we can address them.
I can give you examples. Assaults on teachers should come to the board.
You mean some don't?
Many don't.
Many
And I'm
don't.
thinking
Many,
of
many
an
don't.
elementary school where that was kind of happening.
And many don't come to Mr.
Right.
Brodsky.
Right.
The principal handles it, and Mr. Brodsky doesn't know unless I call him and say, yo, why haven't you told me, because it's supposed to come
Well, I think Mr. Davis will take
I looked
care
at
of
that.
Please let our
that. He's
principals
making
know
notes.
that it's not a negative reflection on them. If they're
Yeah.
bringing students to us, they're doing their
Yeah.
job and it's what
Yeah.
we expect.
Well,
And through
I
the chairs,
suspect they feel
I haven't
pressure
heard, yeah, I
to
don't.
make their numbers
sure they
look
do,
good,
yeah.
but then if they're not reported to
So
you-
I would say through the chair, I don't know what numbers they wanna look good, because and I think this probably knows, if a teacher should write every referral that a kid deserves, and the kid breaks the code of conduct, it should be written, it should be addressed, whether it's
Yeah.
addressed from an informational standpoint, whether it's addressed to contact parents, or it has to have an action. One thing we will never do is we're not seeking to eliminate referrals or to reduce referrals. That haven't been a focus of mine for 18 months. So we'll look at anything from us all, and I'm gonna look
Yeah,
at that.
really, look at the negative publicity, Broward County has gotten because they did participate
Yeah.
in that anti-arrest program. So that boy was not arrested.
Restorative justice.
Yes.
Actually, all my teachers are up in an uproar because that's what they have heard we're going to do today. And I'm like, I don't think so. Mr. Davis has never replied to me that he was an advocate of it. So I've been answering my emails all weekend about this, and I said, oh, you're gonna get it today. I said, okay.
I believe you'll
I've
get.
never heard
get a
Mr.
product you
Davis
like.
say.
So what that program was, there was actually money attached to it, which makes it
Right.
even worse, that you got incentive money for participating in the restorative justice program, so you did not arrest juveniles, so they did not have an arrest record. So then what happened was, when he went to buy a gun and they did the background check, he legally bought his gun, they did the background check, he had no arrest record. If he had had an arrest record,
Yeah, they would
especially
not.
for battery
Right.
on a school board employee, he would not have gotten
Right.
to buy a gun.
And to your point through the chair, and to everyone's point as well, I mean, I'm not in the role of being a law enforcer. I'll allow the Clay County Sheriff's Office to determine when they need to hire. We're not
Right.
going to, my job is to stop the school to prison pipeline to help kids have a better sense of hope. But at the end of the day, if they break the law, then the Clay
break the
County
law.
Sheriff's Office will have to address them
Right.
formally, especially if they touch teachers. So,
Or any school board employee.
Yep.
Mhm.
And they have processes to adjudicate those things.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure don't.
yep. Right, you'll be happy what you see today, by the way. C16 is Intel Math Professional Development. This is our 10th cohort. It is paid through DODEA funding. This will be the last cohort that's paid through DODEA funding. We've sought after another $1.25 million DODEA grant. We are hopes that we'll be able to obtain this. But at this time, this will be the last cohort. It's 30 participants as well. We've trained up to 243 individuals in Intel Math, and they've come. We've seen great stride between the pre-assessment and a post-assessment of the teacher after this significant training, from starting at a 51% to in and at an average of a 75. So, just excited about to continue to offer deepen the conceptual knowledge of mathematics through this professional development.
Is STEM 2 Hub involved with the Intel Math as well, with us at all, or just?
They're involved,
The
continue to
other
partner.
counties.
Not through. I don't think they're involved in.
They
They're
aren't
not-
yet, but they have pledged
They're
support
going
for the
to.
next two
That's right.
cohorts if we
We're trying
receive
to
the
get it.
DODEA grant.
Yeah,
So,
Thank you.
we're trying to get it.
I'd heard rumors that, yeah, okay,
yes,
thank you.
she's offered to contribute
Yeah.
money.
Which is good. We need it.
Mhm.
C17 is NSF write-off fundings not sufficient.
So from 2015, was this found on an audit or something?
No, it's through the chair. These are outdated checks that they're slowly bringing to the board to write off. We've got some that's back 2014. We've noticed the principals, we've noticed the internal accounts folks to start bringing those checks. We need to bring it up to date. They have taken steps to try to collect many times, but this is the last resort where we have to.
But 14 and 15,
Wow.
Just keep
I
an eye
know.
on it. Make sure they don't have people, other kids in there.
that's a,
I
still-
thought there were laws about how long
How
you could
long?
hold a check.
There is, yeah.
We're also getting out of the check business, as I said last
So
month.
this is a school
I get out.
holding on to.
How you gonna-
Like 6 months or a year,
They've
right?
got to know
You
this
can't
is
Six
cash
months.
check. They've
how you gonna get out of a check
If
business?
they're at the
Check
bottom of
business,
that
if they go
pile, it's
online.
like, oh, we never did.
PayPal,
Have to
credit
use a
card.
debit card or something.
Oh, yeah.
Do it this way, we don't have to come to the board.
It's still much, much less than they used
Oh,
to
my.
be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They have actually been doing a great job, even though that does say 2015. We used to get a long list of a lot of money, a lot of
Remember the
stuff.
guy who read them out at the school board meeting? Called him out by name. He used
And
his
the
3
amount.
minutes. And got it
Called
read.
It was a big list.
Oh my gosh. I sat there and thought.
We didn't know that was coming.
I don't know what,
Never had.
what are you talking
Somebody made like a
about?
comment
Yeah.
a few years ago that one guy got up there and used his 3 minutes to read off all
All
the
the
people
names.
who had written bad checks.
Written bad checks.
I guess I blocked that from my mind.
For a reason.
I try to forget
my.
bad things.
not all bad.
No, how many paid after that?
Right.
My name was just pronounced it just.
So you'll be back next month.
C18 is proposed allocation changes for 18-19. As you can see, this is the general fund. This was the allocations that were brought to you for the job descriptions for Dr. Lagucco's division and just added. You will see there's a an HR ad at the bottom of that general fund for a $15,000. And this is to make certain we do not have a break-in service. You know, it's unfortunate we're losing one of our best to go back to Keystone Senior High School. When I was in town, I tried to go see her. She was working out of her office to try to beg her to stay, but she's going to go where it's close to home. And I think her grandchild is. She left. Her grandchild's working at the school, and she's got 2 more years to drop. So, you know, and I don't blame her. She can go make as much as she's making now as a guidance counselor because of her time in, and you know, be with her family.
I think it's a fantastic win for the
Oh man, they listen.
Absolutely.
I agree. I got you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, but this is just to make sure we don't break her service and pay, and that's be unfair for someone who's been here for so long. So, and then adjustment to a title grant. C19 is the district property casualty active assailant insurance renewal through, and this is submitted by Gallagher. This is, as you can see, from 17-18, it's increased by $50,000. But it's still less than 15-16. Go ahead.
Through the chair.
Yes.
This is our annual renewal for our property and liability insurance, and I brought Ms. Jory Vandervoort here from Arthur Gallagher so that she can go through this just briefly for you all as an information item to
Okay.
tell you what has happened this year.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I've got some hard copies.
Sure.
I think there was
Yeah.
We used to actually have a separate workshop on this, didn't we?
that's,
Yes.
just saying that to.
Yeah.
to-
Do you want me to
I
take
can
them out
pass
or
it out for
pass
you.
them
Don't worry
pass
about
them down? Do you want me to sit, stand?
You can whatever you want my seat. You can or you can stand whatever you
I
want.
can
to do.
just stand up. I'm I'll stretch my legs. I'm gonna try to go through this at a fairly decent pace, because I know we've done this for you, pretty much on a yearly basis, and it also looks like you've got a pretty packed agenda this morning as well, but slow me down and just stop me whenever you might have some questions. So on the handout that I gave you, and I think there's probably, you guys have an electronic copy of it as well, we can jump to page 2, if there's page numbers down at the bottom. So if we we're gonna be talking just about property, liability, workers' comp, things of that nature. So on page 2, just talking a little bit about the property marketplace, and actually if I just take one step back, I know when we introduced the topic, we said that it went up about $50,000. The $50,000 increase, basically the good news is we basically have flat rates here today. Everything, the increases that you'll see are just a result of some increased property values, increased payrolls, things of that nature. But the overall rates that we've been able to negotiate are very positive and very favorable for the district. If you think about it from a property standpoint, and that's one of your largest items on this renewal, the property insurance or the property marketplace, for a number of years we've been seeing the rates decrease. The district itself has been able to actually buy some additional coverage over the last couple of years while still maintaining and even reducing premiums. This year, we knew that wasn't going to happen, especially after last hurricane season between Harvey, Irma, and Maria. That it was just sort of eye-opening. We've seen, like I said, we've been seeing rates decrease pretty heavily over the last few years, and so this sort of put the brakes on that. Nevertheless, we were still able to negotiate, and earlier in the year, we thought we were going to see rate increases coming upwards of
10% for your renewal, we were able to keep it at a flat rate, and that was as of last week. We're still working on this. Your program doesn't renew until June 30th, so we continue to work on it. The numbers that we are showing you here today, the numbers will not go past this number. They could only further improve at this point. So that's really the property marketplace. The casualty marketplace is an interesting one as well, especially for Florida and especially for school districts. That has been a fairly soft market, fairly stable market. It still is. We got a very good renewal. Obviously with, the more recent shootings, things of that nature, we could certainly see some effects from that down the road, but a lot of that is really up in the air right now, depending on how Broward's situation works out, how the sovereign immunity caps hold on, all that, because your program still takes into account those pieces as well. Right now, the underwriters aren't freaking out about it, so, it just remains to be seen how, I would say, how the sovereign immunity piece plays out. So that's, sort of, we'll be, stay tuned on that one, we'll be back at to talk about that. The excess workers' comp marketplace, that has been a tough market for a number of years. Mostly because if you think about it, workers' comp claims, you could have a claim that happened 20 years ago, and the way the laws are written, and I don't want to educate our injured workers, but those claims stay open until we can essentially get them to agree to close it or they pass away. So in addition to the long tail of the workers' comp claim, you also have where, 20 years ago, an insurance company charged a certain amount of premium. Well, they never anticipated the cost of the prescription drugs, the types of treatments that are available now. People are living longer lifestyles. So, all those pieces have made the workers' comp market a difficult one over the years. But I can tell you this year we actually had a very good renewal. We had some competition. Slight difference in the two rates between two of the carriers, but the one carrier that you've been with for a number of years has proven to be very stable for you over those hard and soft market cycles. And then cyber risk is, one of those emerging coverages. Everybody seems to be increasing the limits. Again, we got some very good renewals for you on that. We'll keep moving along onto page 3. We'll just focus more on the box in the middle. What this is really, especially because of the property marketplace and the amount of money that you do spend on the property coverages. What's the key to know here is that highlighted yellow row, and what that is this is hurricane modeling. So, while you have, millions and millions of dollars of property values, what essentially happens when the carriers are looking at your account and determining how much coverage and how much limits and what deductibles they can do and the pricing, they're going to run your property schedule through a model, and it's determined based on the cost of the building, the age of the building, when the roof was replaced, the types of windows, all those types of factors go into this modeling, and it brings us a number and it's just a tool for us to give some guidance as to how much wind coverage you want to actually buy. And these are two different, if you look at the two columns on the right side of the chart, you have a ground up loss, meaning from 0 all the way up to the top dollar, and then the last column is the gross loss, and we put that as excess of your deductible. Basically, when you're looking at these numbers, you can see that your loss is anywhere between $17 and $25 million in a category 3 for really severe storm is what we're looking at. The district currently purchases about $20 million worth of wind coverage.
Why is Fleming Island not considered one of the large individual locations? Fleming Island High School.
I did not bring our actual statement of values with us, but I would have to look and see. It might.
I would just be surprised it wouldn't be as much to replace as these other 3 schools.
I'll double check it, but I didn't bring it. Like I said, I didn't bring it with, but we can certainly.
considering what it cost us just to build the one little ACE testing, so.
Right.
Mr. Connell, that was not.
Five times. I haven't brought it to the board in a while.
We've missed it.
I don't want to bring it back ever again.
That was not an insult, Mr. Connell.
I will double check this, and if it should be, I can put it on there, or, certainly either we'll report back or we'll put it on for your board item to update that piece of it. So on page 4, if you wanna flip over to page 4, we'll just look at the top chart. When I mentioned that, basically we've had all of the rates stay the same, some of the exposure bases have changed and increased. Our total insured values went from 909 million upwards of 984 million. The payroll, the operating expenditures, and the student counts have all increased as well. So that's where we see some mild increase across the board. Just out of curiosity, well, for your own curiosity, on page, I'm gonna flip around here for a second, but on page 10, if you're wondering why the property values went up by 8%, which was one of the questions that I had as I was looking through it. I didn't know if it was just something that was purely across the board or if it was something more specific. And so when we extrapolated all the numbers, it really was a very methodical approach, the folks that put it together. And there wasn't just one, hey, let's increase the values by 8% type of thing.
Why did our vehicles increase in value so much?
Well, that Cadillac that Addison bought.
I did not, through chair, buy a Cadillac.
I get the elementary school,
You
we built
actually got
another
built.
elementary
Yeah.
school,
Oh, was
but
it
the
a
vehicles to go up $4 million.
We've added more vehicles this year. I believe we bought more buses, we bought
Oh, we did buy
more
buses.
vehicles,
Good there,
more additional vehicles, so that increased our
Total,
number
yeah, another
of
18.
vehicles.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
$4 million is a lot. I mean, that's a 13% increase. We went up 14% only because of adding the new elementary school.
And
I
the-
believe the buses,
11%
remember,
there.
Can I ask, the administration building, it says it's mine 48%, I painted it. It's-
Yeah, right.
It's gotta come up now.
Betsy, I
And
didn't
it
get
dropped.
Well, that actually
It's not lost money?
The administration
We're rotting
just
away.
went down. They actually went down.
number
Yeah, I
of
know.
buses.
I was like, I painted it, why can't I go back up?
We don't want to
Or something.
So, we're gonna,
way down.
What is seats and scoreboard?
So our bleachers or scoreboards?
Bleachers.
Why they go down?
scoreboards. Because they're older.
Old,
Huh?
They're old.
They're old.
older.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Legutko, I'm very interested. I mean, $85 million or $80 million, $75 million in increased value in 1 year is excessive to me. I mean, I don't know that we would, it's not like we had huge claims from the hurricane,
Right.
either of the last 2 years of hurricanes. I just feel like that's a lot.
About $75 million worth of stuff, I can tell you that.
just take a sip of water here.
Well, this is probably related to like property values increasing in our own homes too, right?
Should.
The schools are
That
related
is
to
true.
the same kind
Should.
of thing,
Yeah.
so I'm sure
Yeah.
that's part of it. Cause I know even my own home has increased.
How many new buses did we get?
Last 2 years, 30, 18, 36.
I'll have to get you the exact figure,
That's
but I
a
know that we
bunch.
retrofitted,
It's good.
28 additional with AC as well, so. but-
And this is talking about the new school too, isn't it?
Right,
That's
but that's just the
incorporated. That's in-
elementary.
Yeah,
That's
that's
the total
incorporated.
cost.
But the
of this
high
company.
That
school
is
went up
complete.
11%.
8%.
But then again,
I guess the high school went up because of the Fleming Allen.
the ACE room.
It's
And the
costing
new
us more and
culinary
more.
arts areas and the new parking lot over at Keystone.
I-
No, that hasn't been
It
done.
made an
That's an
impression
elementary.
on us every
Oh, that's
month.
true, that's true.
And that hasn't been done.
Okay, let's get back so we can
All right,
move along.
I'm gonna jump back to page 7. spend a few minutes on that, and then we'll flip to the end and just look at the prices. I will promise not to go through this entire document.
Okay, thank you.
I always like to go through this. This is the way that I keep track of every single one of my clients. Pictures are far better to look at than just a bunch of numbers on a page. This is how your program is currently structured, and a color-coded illustration of it. So I start from the left of it at the bottom, or actually we'll start on the left and we'll work to the right. So we basically, on the left, we have 5 different towers. We have at the top of each tower, we're gonna talk about which line of coverage it is. So on the far left-hand side of this document, we have the property coverage. At the bottom of the columns, we have the yellow boxes. Those are the district's self-insured retentions. Above that are the different insurance carriers that are on the district's insurance program. So unlike your homeowners where you have just, one insurance company that provides all the coverage with, almost $1 billion of property values, you see we have to use a number of different carriers providing us different limits. It almost becomes somewhat of a jigsaw puzzle sometimes, trying to get all the different carriers to sign on to it. There is a more thorough description of the property program on the next page, but I won't go through that. But essentially, what you have here is about you have $20 million of wind coverage, and for fire or a non-named windstorm, you have $51 million of values, or $51 million worth of coverage. If we go to the next column, this is your general liability and your auto liability. So you have $100,000 general liability, meaning slips and falls, things of that nature. Auto liability, fairly self-explanatory. We have $100,000 self-insured retention. We have $900,000 excess of that. 900 plus 100 gets us to the million. Then above that, we have some out-of-state liability coverage. That's the reason that was put into place, is because you were even talking earlier about it, exactly going to New Orleans, where the people go out of state for different field trips. And so sometimes different areas that they're going to, we have the buses going out of state, vehicles of that nature. That was our main concern. The next column is the school leaders' Arizona mission. It also includes harassment, wrongful termination, things of that nature. We have $100,000 self-insured retention, $900,000 above that. The next column is our workers' compensation, teachers, employees, anybody gets hurt. We have a $250,000 retention. We then buy what we call a buffer layer of $250,000. That brings us to $500,000, and then we have this final policy that sits on top of the $500,000. And then we have the crime coverage. Let me back up for 1 second. If you see, I've color-coded it, and so all the blue boxes are all one carrier. That's your school board package, and they provide what we're calling the primary layer of coverage, and then we piece together additional policies on top of that. One of the benefits of this program, in addition to the flexibility of it, but because this is a package and because of the blue boxes, if there's a loss, let's say the roof collapses on us right now, we would have the number of lines of coverage. We have a property loss, we have a workers' compensation loss. I guess I'm the only person from the public, so I'm the public that's in here. So you have a third-party liability loss. Those are 3 different coverages that are affected. And usually in other types of programs, you would have 3 different self-insured retentions. In this case, you had 1 self-insured retention, so they combine the retentions. You have all the limits above that, but it would take the largest of the 3 self-insured retentions. So that's how that program works.
Can I ask you a
Sure.
question on the general liability, auto liability?
Mhm.
So if I'm reading it, so I want you to tell me if I'm reading it correctly. So if we have a school bus of children that go 2 hours south to Orlando for a field trip, or go 2 hours north to Georgia for a field trip, there's more coverage if they're in an accident in Georgia.
Because you have sovereign immunity in the state of Florida, so there's different laws. When you pass over into Georgia, there's different laws, so that's to give you the extra additional coverage. You don't have the protection of sovereign immunity when you leave the boundaries of Florida.
Okay. But we're still gonna get sued. And we're gonna get sued because they will still sue, even in the event of sovereign immunity.
How much is sovereign
There,
immunity?
there, I'll put a footnote on that statement, okay? So when we're talking about a car accident out of our state, there are changes to sovereign immunity. Basically, hopefully, you're given the same sovereign immunity as a public school district, say in Georgia, okay? But when it comes to sovereign immunity for other type of liabilities, I believe that you're entitled to the same immunity caps that you would have here in Florida. I'm just kind of footnoting that. For the record.
Can I ask a question on workman's comp? Teachers work many more hours outside of their 7.5 hour days. Are they covered? If they're in the classroom at 11 o'clock at night and get hit by
Yeah, they're on
a bookshelf, do they get covered for workman's comp?
If it's on school property,
It's on school
right?
property,
It
yeah.
doesn't matter their hours?
No.
Okay, thank
They're
you.
on school. They're-
But if they get hit by that bookshelf at home during school, no.
Okay, thank you.
So those are all of our package lines that sort of, work, they all work together. They're
What if
not,
they're planning from home?
Nope.
On a planning day?
On a planning day.
It's in
That's,
contract.
but it's up to the up to the teacher as to where they want to.
That's a good point.
I bet you we'd lose it.
Virtual planning days.
Virtual planning?
I administered our workers' comp program at my last employer, I bet you we'd lose it.
They can plan
But on
anywhere.
that, on the one that you're asking about, if they're at school at 11 o'clock at night, if they didn't have their supervisor's permission to be there, then,
Yeah, it's all about scope of official duties.
yeah.
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 Mhm.
Oh, so now we get there.
I'm just saying.
they get, each case usually has to stand on its own based on, historical case law.
So, because teachers are under the assumption that they're not, because we've had, before my time, them denied, because of exactly what Ms. Condon just said. We have keys to the school, we go to the school on weekends to do work, and we get hurt. Are we covered or are we not covered?
I would think you should.
I think you should be.
If you're within the scope of your official duties, you're covered. Just put it
Okay,
that
so
way.
you're
It
there
is
doing your
taken by
lesson plans,
case
that's
by
part of your
case.
That's
official
part of my
duties.
duties.
But now what
part of
about
my
if you're at
school
home?
work. Okay.
See, it all goes back to
What about if you're
the,
at home?
who's in charge of that
What?
school, it's
What
the
if the
principal.
teacher's at home on virtual
Expectations of the
planning?
teacher. Cause then you
We
start
We
getting
shouldn't have
into.
anybody working at 11 o'clock at
I
night.
just want somebody else, because I get these questions all the time.
All right,
So do we.
And they
We-
get carpal
we
tunnel
can-
because they're using their mouse.
if any of us have any questions, let's
That's
talk.
probably something.
We
Talk
can
offline.
inquire. We're not gonna solve this
All right,
today.
let's go.
Yeah,
Right. Nor do
Okay.
we want to
No.
educate on
right,
on
exactly.
how
Yeah.
to file a claim, so
Yeah.
certainly.
We can inquire about
They're,
that.
they're smart enough.
Which is probably why you had this by way of a workshop in the past.
Was that?
Yes.
More to cover.
I'm gonna skip that one, that's just a more detailed, page 8 I'm gonna skip because that's just a more detailed explanation of the property coverage. I'm gonna go ahead and skip back to the last page, because I know you guys got a packed agenda
Right.
and, ask your questions away. So we'll look at, so the last page is page 14. But I said that you jumped back there.
That's all right.
Couldn't stand it any
Lot of money.
longer. So, when we were looking at that colored chart and I pointed out the blue boxes, that's the school board package. And you can see that we increased by about $5,000. That's actually, if you think about it, it's really more of a rate reduction considering the package holds the property values and all those other exposures that increase. So we basically had that as a flat renewal. The excess property, that is where we had the about 8% increase on the property values. The excess workers' comp, the rate was basically the same. We have two options. The one per expiring, which is actually what we're recommending. We're still working on that, so we think we can get that number down a little bit more. But we did have a second option for your excess workers' comp. As you can see, it's a little bit cheaper than option 1. But what I had mentioned when we were talking about the excess work comp carriers, so the carrier that's been on your program is the one that we're recommending. Through those other hard market cycles, they were able to hold their rates fairly stable when in comparison to the rest of the marketplace. This carrier that has provided a good quote has looked at the account in years past and has not provided a real aggressive quote, has typically been higher or not been able to compete or not been interested in competing. So from that standpoint, it's still our recommendation to stay with your carrier. Like I said, we're still working on it. We have about 30 more days to see if we can get the other one down further, but we certainly wouldn't, the number certainly won't go higher than that. The boiler and machinery, the only change in that price is the change in the values, because they also use the property values for boiler machinery. The storage tank, the slight change in premium was a result of the tanks themselves increase in age, and so then they become more, they expect they could be more problematic, so the rates change as the tanks age. We do have some active assailant coverage for the schools. This is more like a extra expense, business income type expense that the property policies don't pick up. That actually stayed the same, which was very welcome considering the current environment. The student accident, that basically stayed the same, and the cyber risk as well. So overall, we're looking at option one as, you know, for your approval in a couple weeks. And like I said, the expectation for the premiums is that this would be the maximum that it would be, and we'll continue to work on it even after you approve it in a couple weeks. We work on it up until June 30th to make sure that we've got the best numbers going forward.
So I have a couple questions. One is, may I ask?
Yes.
So one is, did this take into consideration us adding our school safety officer program, the Guardian program?
No, in fact, that is one of the pieces that I did skip over. We've been talking with Susan and her team. If you go to page, I'm sorry, I meant to talk about that.
I think it's on page 9.
Probably, I'll take your word for it. So there's still, right now, and this is a new thing for all the districts, obviously with everybody trying to gather the information. So we've had some phone calls, and based on the limited information that you guys have available, we've gotten a premium indication of what that would be. But there still is some further information that the district has to provide us. So just from a budgetary standpoint, we're saying for if you go right to the middle of page 9, there's a bullet that says for 29 guardians, the rough additional premium is $4,500.
Okay. And then my other question is, maybe for Dr. Legutko, but I know I've asked this in the past, but I still have never seen any definite information if we have quoted any of this insurance through the Florida School Board's Insurance Trust with the FSBIT people. You know, they come to our FSBA meetings every year and talk about the amount of money that they can save districts, and so I just, my 4 years I've been on the board, we've gotten a renewal every year, but it doesn't feel like we go out and look at where we could possibly save money.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I skipped over pages 5 and 6, which are all the markets that we have gone to. We've extensively marketed that for you.
Yeah, but they're not on there, and so the FSBIT.
No, but typically, so they're a pool program, and we used to handle all their insurance. For your size, you know, typically what happens in a pool program, you would become the larger of all the districts in there. That sometimes can make you subsidizing other folks' loss, but.
Maybe, but St. John's uses them, a lot of other districts. When I look at the districts that y'all cover, except for Miami-Dade, they're all small. So, and Duval, but
Well, these are all the ones that are just in your general area. I didn't put together our whole Florida client list, but these, with the exception.
I just feel like with taxpayer dollars, it's important to look at all areas we could save money. If it's, I've asked several times and no one has an appetite, so I just want to save money with taxpayer dollars. And I feel like that's our responsibility.
Yeah, that little.
I believe we did.
Madam Chair, I just have 3 or 4 generic questions for everyone here to hear, if I may. On page 4, where you've listed total incurred loss experience, those amounts, those are only amounts paid by us out of self-insured retention, or that's the total, you know,
That's
paid
the
by
total.
us and sometimes an insurer?
The second part, yeah.
Okay.
It's the self-insured retention plus the insurance carriers.
And for page 7, this chart, which is helpful. Basically, the yellow at the bottom sets forth our self-insured retention and what it is that we pay first, essentially, right?
Yes,
That, the numbers there, for instance, on property where it says 100,000, we have much more than 100,000 in self-insured retention, I'm assuming. But what you're saying is you would pay out the first 100 and then you'd get into potential coverage by Lloyd's of London and so on and so forth, correct?
correct.
Okay, just so we all understand that. And then for the guardian thing, so what you're saying is that Britt has indicated that they're willing to cover, they're not quite there yet, right? Or are they there?
They're there to cover it. There'll be, that won't be an issue. Making sure that they charge the appropriate premium for that is what they need more
Okay, the
information.
$4,500 is
But
up in the air?
the issue of can you cover it or not, that's not an issue.
All right, and that, where it's the Coach Aaron Feist Guardian Program paragraph, the last sentence there, this coverage will be provided with a $700,000 limit. Are we missing the word in excess of? In other words,
Yeah.
they'll provide 700,000
Excess of the 300.
above the 300.
Correct,
So we would be kicking in, if you will.
yes.
The first 300.
That's a lot.
Especially considering we kick in 100 on everything
Yeah.
else other than
Yeah.
the workers' comp at 250.
Again, I'm just asking these questions just to
Yeah.
have a shared understanding of what we're looking at. And then finally, on page 11, where we're talking about cyber risk, at the very bottom of that table, it says legal services, computer expert, PR, crisis management, so on and so forth. What is the PR? Is that public relations, public
yeah.
record?
Public relations.
Public relations, okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Any questions that you have, ladies? You've got plenty of time to research. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thanks.
How did I get back out of this?
Oh my, there it is. I thought it should be.
Okay, yours go out too.
What were we on?
C20.
19,
Yeah,
okay.
we're going to C20. C20 is a monthly financial report for February. Getting these back up and rolling. C21 is deletion of certain items report. Here you'll see the bulk of the money is $1.7 million is basically the majority of buses that we are deleting and they will go out for sale. And then $29,000 would be for equipment within the school district. C22 is a agreement for renewal. This is for bids. This is for countywide civil engineering along with our countywide architectural. This is the last year for the final renewal. We will go out for bid in 1920. C23 is the annual maintenance for chiller services. This contract's for around up to $160,000. This is we have 4 groups in which that we've identified to help and assist, and they are identified from Group A to Group D, with Train being the first one to help us. And if they're busy and locked down, then we go to the next person, and then keep going throughout in order to find someone to help us to address our immediate needs internally.
Your train is A and B?
Yeah.
They're busy?
Yeah.
Gonna call them again?
I know.
Different locations.
Is there different locations supposed to be for this one, Doc?
We have a Keystone location as well.
Okay, I just want to make sure you update
Keystone.
that. We got one part of the building's busy, we call the other part of the building.
Right.
Okay, C24 is our interlocal agreement to sell low-price fuel to the county commission. for the use of fire and rescue vehicles in the Keystone area. This is where there's administrative fee of, I think it's 3.54%
Per gallon.
per gallon.
Now, as the price of gas goes up, it seems like every time I go buy gas, it's up.
Yeah.
Does this go up when
Yes.
our cost goes up?
Yes, ma'am, since fuel is a commodity that fluctuates, whether it's diesel or regular fuel, we add the 3.54% per gallon. So as fuel goes up, we add the 3.54% administrative fee per gallon that goes up.
From what we purchase it
From what we
at.
purchase it at, yeah, that's correct.
So if it's $3 and.
That's really nice of us.
$3
It saves the
plus
sheriff's office lots of money.
Yes, ma'am.
How much are those lead officers gonna cost us? When you
$120,000.
fluctuate those fees?
If they get into their cars and aren't able to move, that might be a difficult proposition.
So right now, C-24 is for fire and rescue vehicles in Keystone. C-25 goes with agreement with the sheriff's office in the Middleburg area, and this is the same 3.54% administrative fee.
Do we have any agreement with Orange Park and Green Cove?
No, they
I
haven't
don't think
asked.
I've ever seen that.
C-26 is Clay County Utility Authority grant to grant them easement and temporary easement for the Middleburg Transportation Facility. So here, this is all about the First Coast Beltway, so they're trying to get ahead of relocating the water waste and the water main in advance, so they'll have access until April of 2019. C-27 is pre-qualifications for contractors, which we bring monthly. C-28 is a change order for Discovery Oaks Elementary, which was originally School Y. This change order, last month we brought an item that adjusted and unintentionally adjusted the contract, so this is going back to make it right. Doc, you want to speak to it?
And that's correct. I brought you the items last time for Discovery Oaks for the addition of safety and security equipment as well as digital signage and playground equipment for Discovery Oaks. When we do our agreement with our CM, we actually project our tax savings up front and deduct that from the amount up front. So what I basically did was deduct the savings twice. So we're making that adjustment now to the correction. So we had X amount of dollars we had in tax saving up front from the general, from the contract that we deducted in the first change order right off the bat. So I appreciate my strategy to attempt to deduct it twice in this time of fiscal need, but this is an adjustment to let you know that last month really should have been an information item to let you know that, and I actually deducted an additional $122,000. So Kip's making that correction. Our team's making that correction. Mr. Connell, anything else to add to that?
That summed it up, and he didn't actually do it. It was my oversight.
It's okay.
Not intended.
Well, then I need to change the evaluation. I put it very creative and funny.
I'm sure the board would appreciate us attempting to get an additional $122,000.
Hey, we like that. Keep it up.
Hey, keep up the good work.
Thank you. Y'all do good work. Thank you. You're doing, actually, it looks great, so.
Yeah, we're making great progress on
Awesome.
that, and just through the chair, Mr. Superintendent, the First Coast Expressway is going to significantly impact our community, especially the Green Cove community. If you've been through the Shands Bridge lately, you'll see that they're doing the soil testing for the bridge. The new Shands Bridge is supposed to be completed in 2023. That's going to significantly impact our communities, and I suggested to the superintendent that maybe we should look at an informational workshop and to show you what's going to happen with the proposed planning and how that First Coast Expressway is going to impact our community over the next decade. So I thought it'd be an interesting item to discuss at some point.
That would be an interesting workshop.
That would be good.
Okay, so D1 is the Safety and Education Articulation Agreement with the Clay County Sheriff's Office. This is where we'll have training, and all of this is going to hopefully be finalized. We have the next couple are all about the articulation agreement with the Sheriff's Office. For the first one, D1, is for individuals from now until September the 18th to get resource officers trained and on board. That's the first one. D2 is the articulation agreement for October 18 through September 19 for all of the resource officers and for secondary schools, for all secondary schools plus Bannerman, along with the additional personnel that has been embedded in there for leadership. D3 is the Green Town of Green Cove Springs to Police Department articulation agreement, which we I think we're in really good shape with them. D4 is the Town of Orange Park as well. articulation agreement. And D5 comes back for the resolution for the millage.
I asked the superintendent to bring that back, if you're wondering.
Yeah, I didn't say a name, I didn't know
Yeah,
who
that
that
was,
was.
I asked him
Oh,
to just bring it
should
in
be-
its original
yeah,
format,
Yeah, it should
so.
be listed
way it
as Miss
is.
Carrick's
Fine.
item.
If it really matters.
Well, what we did was just copied and pasted, so it's still under Miss Studdard and Madison Davis. D6 is just a hearing for policy to approve the advised proposed amendments.
Woohoo!
No, right? That's
How long
progress.
did it take us?
It's all right, we got it done.
There you go.
It's progress.
I have a question.
That was good.
Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Hey, are we taking a break before we start
I
the
don't know,
next
but that
section?
was good work.
Hey,
We did
Yes.
good.
it took us a while, but we did it.
Yes, ma'am.
And we're all still
When do we
speaking
want to
each other,
start
which
the
is-
next section?
September?
What are we gonna do? We're gonna do HR. Where did
Give us a break for a
Where
while.
did Mr. Brosky go? We're gonna
He
do
has
HR.
a
Time
meeting
purpose.
with
Okay.
CESPA right now.
No, but I wanna do HR next, and that's gonna be.
Well, you know, but really, when we get to the different departments, they should make all their changes.
Yeah,
And
we
it
are
should be
doing that
minor,
now.
we don't
Yeah,
have
that's
to
correct.
fine tooth it because
We-
we're not
yes.
working with it.
Yeah, we need to
This needs
know
to be-
when he'll be
Our
ready.
staff is, our staff is
doing
almost
your
ready.
stuff.
All right,
What's
when
the next
when
one?
Mr.
Unless
Brosky
there's
is
somebody
ready
really
for,
catches,
when Mr. Brosky is
Do it
ready with
at
his
least the
department,
next
let me know and
section.
we'll start go
Through
at
the
it.
chair, has he sent the final versions? Cause I know he's done. Yeah, he's
That-
done.
we
Yeah,
should
well-
need a workshop on that.
We'll
though.
meet sometime.
We'll need to workshop, so
No, no,
we're
no.
kind of,
Yeah.
here's where I'd like to go, and I've spoken with the board chair on this. Yeah, unfortunately, we have to pick up, on our policy, we really should. And I think that we can knock out fairly quickly the rest of section 1, just get it over with. And then I was recommending that we jump right to that section of HR that dovetails with administrative hearing world. And I'd like a chance to talk through that, make sure that we're all on board and what is expected and what, if any, changes need to be made in addition to those revisions that you have before you. So I'd like to, maybe we could schedule something toward the end of this meeting, we can revisit that schedule.
With Ms. Gilhausen not being here, you know.
We shouldn't schedule anything till
Yeah.
she's here.
Right.
I don't agree with having to have a workshop for all the other departments. I do agree that for section 1 that pertains to us and how we govern as a board, certainly we need to discuss it and wordsmith it or whatever we want to do. But when it comes to the other departments, that's their department, they're the experts in their department, whether it be instruction, business affairs, facilities. They should be with the attorney making the changes that they feel are going to best benefit them and their department, and just bring it to us. And if we have questions, we can ask at the agenda review or at the
Which is-
I'd
general
rather have
meeting,
a
but I don't
workshop to-
believe.
I'd rather
That's
have a
exactly
workshop
what-
to be able to ask questions
Go
of,
ahead.
why did you change this, and so that we are in the loop. I wouldn't wanna do that at the agenda
And we can do
review.
and in relationship to that and for both, instead of doing it in an agenda review and extend this, I would prefer the workshop and go over individual, like HR.
We might can knock
And if
out-
we can do
Do them all at
2
once,
or
okay.
3 at the same time
You
and
know,
say,
I don't
okay,
think-
we're gonna suggest 2 hours
Yeah.
for this.
I don't think it'll
And be
take,
able to try to get through as
it
many
Just
as
keep
we
in
can.
mind,
shouldn't take
they're the
nearly
experts
as
in their
long
department.
as
Yeah.
how many days do we
Absolutely.
meet,
You
3
know,
and
we
4?
shouldn't be
But they're
telling them
also-
how to run.
But there are also concerns that we hear about that we can then, and from previous years, 2 or 3 years ago, we may have heard something and thought, is there a policy about that?
Yeah.
Just to be able to refresh and make
Refresh.
certain.
I think it'd be
just a
good, and I
thought.
do think that we probably can knock out more than one department.
Yes, yes.
Yes,
And have everybody ready when we set this workshop, so depending on how fast we go through,
Right.
because I don't think it'll take that
And
long.
through the chair, my staff's ready, so.
Yeah, we're
Ms.
ready to
Piva
go.
has a question.
Who?
Ms. Piva.
Ms. Piva?
Yeah, I know that both instruction and HR has huge conflicts with the contract. So there are things in policy that is not contractual, and contractual only, trumps policy. So I didn't know that they were ready to go because no one's talked to me about it, but I would like to see some sort of workshop because I
Yeah.
will have big
Yes.
problems.
Well, and I think it's very important that you be there. And I know that you're gonna be out of town from what date to what date?
Saturday to 18th.
18th.
Yeah.
So we don't want to schedule it between the 1st and the 18th.
Well, that's.
Out of a courtesy.
Yeah, I would
Between
imagine
the
there would
1st
be
and
a
the
lot
18th
because
for
it's
all
got
of
a,
us.
there's,
You're gonna be
there's,
gone.
Yeah.
We're gonna be.
Oh, we're
many
gonna be gone
parts.
We're gonna be
that
gone
last
too,
week.
so.
That's right,
yeah.
we, that's
September.
one
There
of,
are many
that's one of
parts
the
that are in
underlying.
conflict with
I agree.
contracts.
Either
Give us
August
the
or
summer off.
September.
Yeah.
Yeah, August after the
Yeah.
school year begins.
Yeah, I would think so.
We could start one and then.
And really, that gives HR a chance to reach out to you and
Yeah,
see,
because I didn't know that
talk,
they were even.
see what changes they need to make and,
Yeah.
yeah.
Really, because
Okay.
July is full, that's already, 3 weeks
Yeah.
into June,
Yeah.
and July
Yes.
is full of budget.
Yeah.
So it really becomes very
That's fine.
taxing.
Well,
We'll
and
go
we do
whenever,
would
until
like
then
to
I'll
have a
have
little
Mr.
vacation.
Brosky work with
You know,
everyone.
we'll see.
That we submitted it to.
Okay.
Mr. Dag, which is the first layer we should be doing.
Yes, but we all know it's
Yes,
coming.
it's coming.
Okay.
It's coming.
All right, let's move
All
along.
right, D7 is special action.
Do we have any? No?
We do have one. that
We
we'll
do?
call. We had two, but it went to one because the individual resigned.
But it's not on the backup yet.
No, no.
Still investigating one of it, but I know it'll be there.
So he'll call each of us
Yes,
with
ma'am,
details.
I promise. D8 is just for us to approve the advertised 17, 18, 19, 20 student exceptional education special policies and procedure manual.
And that'll give us a month to read the 236 pages.
239.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Every word.
Yeah, every word.
Were there changes in that also?
No, ma'am.
That was last month,
Yeah,
yeah.
and there was only language to the chair,
That
language
was
that was
state,
from the
but there
state
was
put
no
in there.
substance.
Yeah, nothing. D9 is the annual renewal for insurance, for employee benefits. This is through the committee's recommendation. As you're the backup, the original identification was 29% increase, and through the committee legwork, it is now being recommended for 11% overall increase negotiated with the United Healthcare. Anything, Sheila, you want to add? Yeah, Sheila.
I'm just going to sit here, okay?
You want me to pass
Unless you need
this
me
out?
to stand. I think you have your backup that I sent.
Yeah, I think I'll pass this out too. Then I asked for a document to be billed. I'm gonna pass something to be billed. Bill.
The overall renewals, as Mr. Davis had said, it originally came in at 45%, but they made a business decision to go to 29.3. We've negotiated it to 28. And then the insurance committee, after looking at many different plan designs, settled on option 6, which brought back 11.08% increase. That's on the medical. And I'll go over the plan design changes with you in a few minutes. Going over the rest of the products, medical gap insurance, the initial renewal came in flat. I know it says 17% decrease, but that was after some negotiations. And that 17% will be only to employees because the board does not contribute to that plan. The dental came in with a 5.08% increase. We had negotiated it flat, and then we were able to further negotiate both plans down to an estimate of about 5%. That's a combination to the board and the employees, because remember, the board contributes if an employee elects single dental and they're on Plan B, which means they have no medical. The accident, injury, critical illness, and whole life will be moving from Unum to AFLAC. That's in order to help offset because Benefit Focus through our web enrollment carrier will be beginning for annual enrollment. They have a partnership with AFLAC, and they were able to negotiate with them to get some offsets if we moved our products from Unum to AFLAC. Those are all voluntary, except for the accident injury is offered to Plan B employees. So that will go to AFLAC as well. So they're all very comparable. One good thing about these, some of the people that couldn't get the critical illness or whole life in the past It'll be guaranteed issue with no pre-existing, so that's a real big plus for a lot of people that wasn't able to get onto the Unum product. So, and Unum has agreed to direct bill anybody that wishes to keep their current critical and whole life. They'll direct bill them, so that won't be an issue with that company. The vision, we were already at a renewal, we had one more year on our renewal, but we were able to go back to them and negotiate a 7.5% decrease, and further our renewal out to 2020. That's also a combination to the board and the employees. Basic life and disability, AD&D, that was also able to negotiate approximately a 5.5% decrease and get a renewal for 4 years. The combined savings of all of the ancillary products is approximately $271,000 that we were able to negotiate down for the board and the employees. And that will take effect 10/1/18. If you go to, I don't have a page number on here, but option 6, that's what's being proposed by the committee. When we looked at plan designs, the last thing the insurance committee wanted was for us to bring back to them options that range between 10 and 15%. We did that. We actually had about 7 or 8 different options for them to look at just on this one meeting. They settled on option 6 for several reasons. Number one, on the majority of the plans, the only thing that's affected is your deductible and your max out of pocket. And less than 10% of the people overall hit that max. And normally if you hit your deductible, you're going to hit your max because you've had an inpatient hospital stay. On the choice plan, there was a slight increase to the PCP copay. The reason that they opted for this one over the one that didn't is because it was like a $20 per month savings. And this is only a $10 if you go increase. So their rationale was, okay, well, not everybody's going to go every month. They'd have to go twice a month to break even. So on this one here, it still saved $20 per pay period on that. We did up the copay for your outpatient surgery or your ER from $300 to $500, and that's because people were utilizing the ER to get their MRIs done because it was at the same cost, $300. And as you know, if you go to a freestanding facility, it's a lot cheaper, about $900 to $1,100. If you go to an ER, you're looking at thousands of dollars. So you got to make the right choice sometimes, or try to navigate them down that path. And then that's really the only changes, and we've done what we've heard employees ask for. They want a catastrophic plan with lower per pay period rates. That's what I would see as your choice HSP plan. And then they can buy up to the choice or the choice plus. And the rates that you see at the bottom is the overall rate that we get from United Healthcare. And we had to make assumptions as how we think that the population will shift during this enrollment. So we've made some assumptions by that, by about 10% moving. You'll go to the next page. The insurance committee also wanted to try to give employees that would choose the choice HSP plan a little sweeter deal by offering a $250 HSA contribution by the board. Of course, that's subject to collective bargaining. But we're not the only district. There's tons of districts there I've looked at that they either contribute to an HRA or to an HSA. And the reason that you do that, the reason behind it, is because when you have a plan that's got a deductible first, so you got to meet your deductible before the plan will pay anything. Some younger people are like, okay, I'd like that plan, but if I got to go to the doctor, it's going to cost me several $100s right off the bat. But if they have a little bit of money in there to cover that, then they're more apt to go that way, and it saves the district money, and it saves them money because they're not having to pay right out of their pocket. But let's say they do have a hospital stay, they gotta meet that deductible before the plan's gonna pay. So again, they're taking more of a risk, but sometimes that risk is worth it to save the money per pay period, because they may not have it. If you go to the next one, talking about the nicotine tobacco surcharge, there's quite a few districts that are doing that. Some of them is Seminole, Palm Beach. The nicotine surcharge it would be applied when we ask on their open enrollment, because it will be a mandatory enrollment this year. The $25 per pay period surcharge is if they say yes, that they use nicotine products, whether it's chewing tobacco, smoking, any of that, it would be on top of what they would pay per pay period. Now, we're not trying to do that as a punishment. We're trying to get our people healthier. CDC says that anybody that uses nicotine, it costs the district or the employer about $3,300 each, and that's in lost productivity and additional claims because they have more bronchitis and different medical issues.
So we're assuming that someone will self-report.
Yeah, because we're gonna make the affidavit very
Okay, I was just curious, I
strong-worded.
mean, I would think that would be easy for people to say, no,
And
I
you
don't
will
use-
have
yeah.
that, but the purpose
assume
of it
that's
is
also
to,
when the
because
doctors-
if they say yes, we will offer them a free program that they can go through to try to help them quit, whether it's nicotine patches, if
Right,
it's
right.
classes, all of that. And then once we are notified, yes, they have completed that class, the first of the month following, we would remove them back to the lower rate. We'd take off the surcharge. We wouldn't charge it to them anymore.
Okay.
Okay? So again, like I said, that's not,
Right,
that's not used as trying to be,
punitive, yeah.
take it out on someone, because we had one employee say, well, why aren't you charging it for someone that's got diabetes? Well, those are medical conditions, and some people don't have a choice. It can be hereditary, whatever. This is a choice to use or not to use.
Right.
So that would be my rationale for that.
And insurance companies do that with health credits,
Yes.
you get your annual physical, you are
That
within
was
your,
the-
your BMI is within the range it's supposed to be, you get these credits up to, I think my husband's like up to $300 per.
Yeah, I've
person.
even seen Seminole, I think it was Seminoles who I looked at, one of them, and they offer, they call it 5 steps to wellness. And if you go and do your biometric screenings and your BMI was within a certain amount, there's 5 different things, and they give them a whole big list. Then they add $750 to your HSA. Or if you don't do all these, then you don't get that $750, and they reduce how much they're gonna contribute to the board contribution. So there's several different things. I mean, people are being real in tune to how to try to control these insurance costs.
I know the state of Florida, insurance plan is doing the nicotine surcharge.
Yeah.
They are, and they're self-insured, I believe, what I read.
Through the chair, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So I know that on the HSA contribution, when we talk about this, so this plan will go forward if approved by the board. The board's not approving the $250 contribution because it's subject to collective bargaining. So this is just a sample in there?
We put that in there because I'm only presenting what the insurance committee recommended.
Okay.
And that's what they're recommending, but it's still subject to collective bargaining because it's compensation.
Now let me ask you how this is gonna
So-
work,
Just wanna make-
because.
For the
We'll
board.
file a ULP
We
as soon
can't
as
vote
that's
on
All
that.
right, wait, well,
What?
this is, I'm confused now,
Right.
because if that is in there for us to approve,
It's
and
not.
that,
If you,
It has to be taken out.
Has to be
in the
taken
board
out.
That's my
agenda,
question.
I asked you to approve everything else except for that because it's subject to
Okay.
collective
Right,
bargaining.
that's what I thought I saw.
So, but I just need to tell you and explain it, so that way you know what you would be voting on.
okay.
So we're not
Um,
voting on
when
that
you're in
part.
collective bargaining.
Okay.
Okay,
But
'Cause
I'm
I
only
wanted to make
presenting what the insurance committee has recommended.
okay.
But
This is
in
why
the
this is
agenda
back up.
item at the bottom, I put that at the bottom and say it's subject to collective bargaining.
Yes.
Okay,
I put it separate than everything else.
I mean, well,
Okay.
how,
Put it in there
Because
without-
you're only
Okay.
voting on plan design, you're not voting on this or on the per pay period rates. You're only voting on what the plan designs are gonna be
Financial impact.
for 18-19.
okay, because that was my concern, is I
So
thought,
that's
how
just-
can we vote on this
You're
and
not, but I
not hold
wanted to
you up
explain
with
it and
getting our
present what
insurance?
they recommended.
Can we remove that from the backup? That shouldn't be on the backup at all then.
Just that slide,
Just
so,
that one slide,
yeah,
I'll
we
take
can
it
remove that
off.
slide.
Cause I think
That's
if we
easier.
vote and that's part of the backup, we're
Yes,
approving
some
it.
gonna
Even
correct
with
it.
your little note, we're still approving it, so it would need to.
Yes.
I'll remove the slide.
That would probably be best.
I was just concerned,
Addison,
are
is
you
that
gonna?
okay? We remove that one slide?
I think you could
Excuse
do
me.
it for information only, because I think it is important for the board to know
Right.
what the
Well, maybe
insurance
have it
committee
as
is
the last
recommending.
page.
But the insurance
For
committee
information.
can't recommend that. The insurance
Right.
committee cannot recommend that they're gonna give $250 to people who are on the HSP in their HSA, but not anybody else's HSA. They can't because then it's gonna come down to, your suggestion that that's what we're going to bargain.
No, I don't agree with you. First of all, I don't know where it says that the insurance committee can't make a recommendation for
Not
that.
with money.
Yes, they can. The whole thing is money. It's all about
No,
premiums.
they're not.
Who pays what
She's talking about
is what is
bargaining.
collectively bargained.
She's talking
Who-
about the salary. That's what
Again,
was going-
who pays what is what is collectively bargained. But that doesn't mean the insurance committee can't recommend an overall picture of finances. The whole thing is finances.
My concern, Ms. Gann, was that we didn't want to slow you down on being able to have an open enrollment of our employees to be able to sign up for insurance. I was trying to figure out how we were going to do that when you don't know how much we're putting
Going to be
forward.
contributing.
Well, if you will look at the agenda item at the bottom, I put on there subject to collective bargaining. If approved, and this is only for the HSA, not for all the other benefits, because again, you're approving benefits, you're not approving what everybody's gonna pay per pay period, you're approving the design.
We've got to just make sure that people understand.
I'm just saying, only for the HSA, they're gonna get $250. That's bargaining.
So through the chair, I will look at status, why I posed the question today, to make certain that we're all on the same page. So I will look
Yeah.
and determine whether or not it needs to be informational purposes only, whether it needs to be eliminated, or within these documents, so.
You might look into what's legal and not legal.
Yeah.
We also have employees who are not collectively bargained, who take our insurance. And so that's part of, we're approving benefits for
True.
different bargaining units and non-bargaining units.
Yes, ma'am.
So they have a right to know as well.
It would be nice if we were through with bargaining,
Yeah, it can, there's no way
but
financially.
there's no way.
If you go on to the medical and loss ratio page, you can see that our claims from March of 17 through February of 2018 is running at about 108.4% loss ratio. Premium versus claims incurred, that just backs up what the summary was, just tells you about it. I wanted to show the deductible utilization, that tells you about the deductible and max out of pocket. And as you can see, the average is about 10% or less that people actually meet. And it breaks it out by plan for you, is how many lives you would be touching. And of course, the Choice HSP is gonna be higher anyway, and it's not, which is surprising, but Choice Plus is. Because on the Choice HSP plan, you have to meet your deductible before the plan pays. We've already pretty much went through all the ancillary renewals, so we really don't need to go through those, because I've already told you what they came in at. Every one of them is a reduction. The plans with AFLAC are very similar to the plans that we have today, so that won't be a real big change. As I mentioned earlier, we will be having a mandatory enrollment That is due to the new web enrollment system and not being able to get the information from the current carrier. Plus it cleans up everything, so that will begin on July the 24th.
And Sheila, I thought that, excuse me, one second, but I thought that the one lady said at the insurance committee meeting that the Affordable Care Act requires an active selection by employees every year.
That's only on your FSAs and HSA. You have to reselect those every year. The district, or we can make it, it's up to us where we want to do a passive enrollment or make it mandatory. And normally we just let it all roll over unless there's significant changes. And with changing from one enrollment carrier to another, now's a good time to clean it all up. And also it gets people to look at like who their beneficiaries are, because sometimes they go through a divorce and they don't think to change it. So it just cleans things up, and it gives this new company, and that's what they also prefer. And they recommend as a business practice is to do a full mandatory enrollment by all employees. And we've already started advertising all of it.
Okay.
Any of y'all have any questions?
I think if we do, we will be calling you.
I'm sure.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gann. Okay, Mr. Davis,
That's it.
that's it.
That's it. Thank you, Sheila. I do have one item that we can see on June the 7th. We're supposed to have a executive session directly after our board meeting. I'm asking if we could move that, and I know Ms. Skillhouse is not here. Can we move that? We're having on June the 18th. We're having our next workshop. Can we tack it onto that? And that board agenda review is going to be really fast.
Instead of the executive session on the 7th, you
Yes,
want to
ma'am.
cancel that?
Cancel that and then put it
That works for
on
me.
June 18th, just tack it on to.
Okay. Well, there's no school and no mentoring, so I wouldn't have any objections. What about
Works for me.
June 8th? Now, that'll be
And
the
our
Monday
agenda
after we
review
get
on
back from Tampa. Yeah,
On the 18th, are we at 9:30?
at 9 o'clock.
We're 9 o'clock.
It said
I
9:30
thought I
on your.
had seen some things that said 9:30, and I was wondering where
It said 9:30 on
that,
your sheet.
Where did 9?
but we're actually 9 o'clock.
Is that one of the ones we were tying into something else?
No, ma'am.
No, that's
We
July
moved it.
23rd.
Should be 9 o'clock.
9
It
o'clock.
is
So it
9
should
o'clock.
be
Yes,
9
ma'am.
o'clock.
Okay,
9
so
o'clock
the
on the
email is
18th.
incorrect.
Plus executive session.
It's okay.
That shouldn't interfere with anybody. It's summertime. And we'll be
Are there
back.
disciplines next, on Thursday, the 7th?
Yes, ma'am.
I bet there are.
There are.
End
There's
of the
4 or
year
5.
stuff.
So what time are we starting?
3.
I'd say 3. Is it 3:30?
Scheduled for 3:30 right now. We were gonna discuss whether or not we needed to move it earlier.
Yes,
If
ma'am.
you were still adding cases.
I think we're good. I think right now that's all we have is we have 5.
You think y'all want to meet at 3 or 3:30 then?
It's up to the board.
We've got
I have it
5.
on my calendar already at 3:30, but I can move it to 3, I don't have anything.
And I'm
3:30?
fine with whatever.
Clock's fine.
What do you want?
Let's do 3 o'clock, then we
Okay.
won't be in a
Alright,
hurry.
3
Have
o'clock.
we
good.
notified the parents?
Gives us time to go have dinner.
We'll make sure.
That'll give us time
Ms.
to,
McCauley, just
Something.
make sure we notify parents. This will move up to
Okay.
3 o'clock.
and let's see, any other comments from the superintendent? Okay, next is board comments. We've got a meeting in the morning,
Yes, ma'am.
9 o'clock.
Yes, ma'am. I'll be there.
Let's see.
Not us, just
No,
you.
yes, ma'am.
Clay virtual
You're gonna be worried.
graduation. Clay virtual graduation's 4 p.m. Friday the 1st.
Yes, ma'am.
And then I guess I'd better check what time I'm supposed to
Yes,
get
ma'am.
out.
I'll have principals reach out, email you today.
Yeah,
About-
okay. And then Monday, the Beat Bannerman
If they haven't
graduation
today.
is at what time on Monday?
I believe that's a 1
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock?
Yes, ma'am.
One ahead
Okay.
of time at 12.
And then the last day of school is half day on the 6th. We have disciplinaries on the 7th at 3 and school board meeting. Everybody going to Tampa for the conference?
You're not.
I'll be out of town.
Is Ashley
You're
going?
not going,
I'm
okay.
not
Is
sure if
Ashley
Ashley's
going?
I don't know.
I've had a family trip planned for a year.
Oh, well, that's
That's
understandable.
your cruise, right?
Ms. Bush, is
Good.
Ms. Gilhousen going to the conference?
Well, she was doing her registration on her own, so it didn't go.
But
I'm
the three of
going.
us are going.
Yep.
All right,
I
and then,
thought she said she was, but
I thought she
wasn't.
was too to
I
finish
think
up. I thought she was going to finish
That's
up.
right, she
point.
was
okay,
working on
and then on the
Yeah.
18th, we've got
Hours.
the agenda review at 9 plus
Yes.
executive session. And then on the 28th, we've got our July,
School board meeting.
our July board meeting on June 28th.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That gets us into the near future. Okay,
Okay. I will.
at least we know where we are. I was so afraid they were gonna have something we forget where
And
it
then the
is.
24th workshop is moved to the 23rd
Just a minute,
because we have our budget workshop at 1 o'clock.
just a minute.
July,
24th
correct?
of what month?
July,
Here we go.
yeah.
Wait a
So we have
minute.
an agenda
So
review
Sweet
at,
Sensations
again, it says
at 1.
9:30.
Sure, and I think.
Yeah, for some reason it says not.
That one was 9:30 because she was
That's
trying to tie it into
9:30,
the afternoon.
Okay, and then 1
Okay.
o'clock is the
Right,
other.
So
so there
on the
wasn't so much gap between
Yeah.
the two
Yes.
meetings.
So on the 23rd, we meet for agenda review at 9:30,
Correct.
and then 1 o'clock is the tentative budget review.
Yes, ma'am.
Right, and then the 31st is the public hearing,
At 5:01.
5:01.
Do not come at 5:00.
No.
What day is that?
5:01, that's a Tuesday.
Tuesday the 31st?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
And
that's
then
not in
our-
my calendar.
Does
Then we're
everybody
back to
know?
August.
Wait,
and
tell me again,
starting
5
again.
o'clock?
5:01,
August 2nd is the
And that's a
board
budget
meeting.
one.
August 2nd is the board meeting.
And then here we go again.
And
okay.
rock and roll on the 7th.
Any other
teachers show
comments
up.
from the board? Okay, meeting is.
I have one,
Oh, go
I
ahead.
just have one quick question about graduations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has anything been changed? Because I did get a letter or a note from Ms. Pickett saying, because there were changes made, and I don't know.
It's just
you and-
how she organized it to walk out, she just wants,
Is
she's
that the only
changing
thing?
who
You
goes
at
out.
least
She
got
was
notified.
asking what our time was that we were going to be arriving.
Yeah.
What time does graduation begin?
It's 8 o'clock.
Thank you,
She'd like us there at 7:50.
thank you. I can do
Oh,
that.
wow, that's early.
Good, I can do
Clay
that.
High wanted to be at 7:45 last year.
7:15.
They came and met me in my car with an umbrella.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
pouring.
I remember those,
But I
right?
What,
guess
you're
I
doing
should
our-
check
you're
and
doing
see when
Oakley?
I'm supposed to be
I'm
there.
Oakley.
You have
I
emails
thought you were
today.
Oakley. What is that?
No, ma'am, I'm gonna leave next year.
He's
Your
next year.
Keystone.
Yeah.
Keystone.
Where
Where
are
are
you
you
going
going?
this year,
Clay
Keystone?
Clay, and Ashley's doing Orange Park?
I don't know.
I'm Middleburg.
I know where I'm supposed
Where
to
you go?
be. Clay High.
Okay.
Mike and I are going together. We were together at Keystone last year, now we're at Clay High.
Together. Okay, meeting is adjourned.
Sure.